Welcome to Good Morning Hospitality, your one-stop shop for the latest news, noteworthy trends, and thought-provoking discussions across the industry. From hotels and short-term rentals to all things travel and hospitality, you'll find each episode equips you with the information that you need to start your week. Join us on Good Morning Hospitality every Monday, wherever you get your podcasts.
Good morning.
Dang it.
I
Wow.
win.
I should have had that third cup of coffee. Y'all
I know.
jumped in
I
early.
put 2 shots of espresso in my cappuccino this morning, so energized.
Double the
So
trouble.
I'm only like 3 sips in, so let me catch up. I'll,
Amateur.
Amateur. I love it. Well, happy Monday. For all the listeners, FYI, we have a big surprise, big announcement. Saturday, it was Michael Golden's birthday. So give him big happy birthday. He made it another year.
He did not turn
Somehow-
40.
Yeah,
Nope,
he did not
nope.
turn
Still
40.
only one gray hair somewhere over here.
It's
But
so crazy because I have so many more gray hairs than you do. So at least you're winning. You're beating me on that front.
That's awesome.
How about you,
redheads
Will?
have a tendency to not gray for a long time. So fingers crossed.
Yeah.
Lucky. How about you, Will? What did you do this weekend?
Oh, nothing. Just hung out in Denver with some people, had some social gatherings. Chris Osaka from Tomu was in town, so he and I got a drink with Oliver from Wheelhouse. So, just a couple industry folks. Actually kind of random, but through these kind of, little meetups while people are in town, Oliver and Eric Mason and I are actually putting a Colorado short-term rental meetup dinner together this Thursday. So shout out to any of our listeners there in Colorado. You guys can come. But yeah, that's pretty much what I did this weekend, was just chill. Lots of
Being Mr. Social.
Yeah, too much social. Yep. And there's Chris Osaka himself. Boom. Love it.
Yeah.
Right on cue, Chris.
I moved this weekend and I really aggressively nested in the last place. I was there for like 4 years, and it is, man, just unpacking it. And you're like, where do these things go in the new place? There's lots of boxes, and we're having, an integration issue. There are 2 dogs and my cat, and where there's a little bit of a turf war going on in the household right now. So stay tuned. See who will
I love
win.
it. I was gonna say
Yeah. There's been a lot of hissing.
cute.
A lot of hissing.
Have you guys built a box fort yet? That's what I want to know, with all the boxes.
Oh no, that was a total missed opportunity.
Big missed
We're just trying to
opportunity.
get them out,
Dang it. All right. Well, maybe next move.
Yeah.
All right. So we have some serious topics to cover today. Michael, do you want to give us the order?
I think we're just gonna flow with it.
All right, let's do
So
it. You're first then.
the interesting one for me was Under Canvas partnering with Hyatt. And it's interesting for a number of reasons. That the outdoor space is now being kind of solidified by traditional hotels. But it's also interesting because Under Canvas signed with SLH, and SLH is distributed through Hilton. So they're kind of getting the best of both worlds. They're getting a little bit Hyatt, a little bit of Hilton. I don't know how they square that peg. I'm sure someone's thought of that, but more to come on that story. But long story short, for me, the legitimizing of outdoor resorts and outdoor hotels has come almost faster than the legitimizing of short-term rentals.
Yeah, you can see these hotels really trying to not necessarily play catch up, but trying to solidify this alternative accommodations space and kind of gobble up and add to their conglomerate any of these pieces to make sure that, if their traditional customers aren't really interested in staying in hotels any longer, that they're capturing them wherever else they're going to go.
Yeah, different life cycles, different journeys. The Under Canvas, their target demo is probably somewhere in between the young couples without kids all the way to millennials with kind of elementary school aged kids. They're not the multi-generational. They're certainly not business travel. they're pure leisure travel. And so it makes sense. They add them into Hyatt, let them burn rewards points, no different than what Marriott Homes and Villas has done with vacation rentals. It's largely a place to burn loyalty points versus earn them, but it's a differentiator, and it will likely continue to happen. I think there's been a couple of brands that have made some moves, but there are a few brands that still have some moves to make.
Can you imagine trying to expense one of those like, yes, here's my expense report and here's my $2,000 a night glamping resort. It was necessary. It was a business expense.
There's no other hotels in the area.
Yeah.
It was the
Had
only
to do it.
Had to do it. It's a hot take, though. You know, it's becoming more legitimized than potentially short-term rentals, and it's kind of true. You know, we saw the AutoCamp deal happen with Hilton not too long ago, which was a big move. So I think I don't know. I want you guys to take maybe on that, because the unique stay landscape hotel, you know, inventory was really popular during COVID, and this is obviously pre these, you know, deals and partnerships and all this other stuff. But they're very popular in the short-term rental world. A lot of short-term rental operators actually even got into glamping and, you know, kind of landscape resorts. So
What's up, Eric Moeller?
yeah. So why do you think it's
Wolf.
becoming like, yeah, why do you think it's becoming a thing more now than it was during like the peak of COVID?
Well, because it takes a long time for these companies to mobilize and get these deals done. So it could be a thought that, you know, interest that was peaked during COVID when these things happen. That is kind of like a benefit of the short-term rental industry, is the, you know, the quickness to adapt and innovate and things like that. But for Hyatt to make a change, they have to go through a lot of due diligence. They have to make sure they're making the right partnership. And I think the difference is also like scalability. Like, you're not about to see like 20,000 ultra luxury glamping sites, right? Like, they're buying someone that does a certain thing really well. It's very niche, and it's not necessarily about scale. It's about diversifying the options.
Yeah, there's really only like 4 incumbents on the outdoor glamping space. So, and there's 5 flags. So we'll see who the odd ones are out in the near future. But I think, to Brandy's point, a lot of people, you can learn really quickly in short-term rentals, and it's tough what to classify these properties, because most of them have, you know, Under Canvas will have 2-bedroom units. They have kitchens or kitchenettes in the units, but they also have common spaces like a pool or a restaurant. So they're both a short-term rental and a hotel. They can just look more like a hotel to the hotel folks and fit in better with a Hyatt or a Hilton or a Marriott than you know, maybe even Brandy's inventory. So it's and then why are people doing it now? I think there's the recognition that there are only a handful of incumbents with a handful of sites. You know, Under Canvas, I should have looked up exactly how many sites, but they probably have like 8 total. And so there's still a huge market there, and there's not many people doing it in a full resort style way, with swimming pools, with amenities, with front desks, and all that, common spaces for retreats. And then you've got the whole like push back into nature. I do think over the next 10 years, you know, there's already a very clear recognition that all of the tech time and screen time that we have is terrible for us. But
What?
it's just going to get kind of more and more understood, and maybe even some big companies will force their people to take time off. So Twitter moves to Austin.
Yeah.
Twitter then says every second Friday you have to spend in nature, and then boom, all these places in Hill Country are booked for oblivion. So I think they are getting ahead of the trend. I love it. Obviously, I'm involved in the space and a little biased as well, but I do think that that this is potentially the next wave of alternative accommodations.
I think my only like caveat to that is again about scalability. Like I would, it's not like this is going to be, I think it can be a very successful niche in the alternative accommodation space. But like, I don't think that if everybody's like, oh, this is the thing I'm going to go develop now, I think a very select few locations are going to do this very well and will be very successful.
Well,
I get very worried about people saying like, oh, this is the next big thing, when it's like when you saw everybody go and try to do STRs and then it doesn't really work for everyone.
well, you're spot on. I couldn't agree more. There's so many mom and pops out there with 2 units, 5 units, 10 units, but there's not really any funding for these types of properties because again, a bank can't call it a hotel, and you also can't call these houses or permanent dwelling structures, and then even if you could, then the financing rates are so high that it's tough to get a $10 million construction loan to build something.
Yeah.
So there is definitely right now, at least in this moment in time, a big barrier to entry for people doing it at the scale that Under Canvas or AutoCamp or Collective have done. But that in the challenge lies the opportunity. So those that can kind of break through that, develop a 50 key hotel, landscape hotel with amenities and restaurants and whatnot, there's a huge opportunity there.
Yeah, it's going to be basically going from that mom and pop side, like finding that in between from mom and pop and huge 150-acre resort, right? Like you got to find that in between ground where I think if you do build a normal building structure, then with like yurts and campgrounds around it, that probably should be able to help. I think kind of maybe, I don't know if the word stabilize it would be the proper term, but make it more easier to like barrier to entry to get into that type of development rather than just like, hey, I'm going to pop up 50 yurts and domes and whatever, I
mean, we saw it at eBay. It was soccer moms selling Beanie Babies on eBay, right? And then it became professionalized where 80% of the sellers are professionals. We saw it with Airbnb. Brandy, I bet if we rewind to Sexton's early days, it was just a handful of units that you guys were operating, and then you became professionalized. And that's happening right now in the landscape hotel space. It's very much a mom and pop business with rare exception. But over the next 10 years, that's likely going to change. Yeah.
Chris, Osaka, if you're tuning in still, I want your opinions. Send them in chat. Want to hear all about it. All right, Brandy, you also had a cool story. Well, not, I guess cool is not the right term either.
Yeah.
I don't know how to speak today. You had a story basically covering Selina and their liquidity crisis. So let's jump into that.
Yeah. So this is kind of one of the COVID darlings. Selina has announced they have no possible way to remain solvent. So meaning there's just no way for them to get more cash. And this is just another one of like this kind of like the SPAC mergers that, a lot of critics said that this was going to happen, and it's happening. And so as I've said before, like this, like watching these companies fall apart is not good for our industry. And the fact that we have, 3 big companies, Selina, Sonder, Vacasa, who went public and just haven't performed well, it doesn't help our industry at all. And, Selina had a little bit of a different take to it. They were really focusing on the digital nomads, combinations of hotels and hostels and that kind of environment. And the product was really cool. They had a huge reach, but they don't have a way to pay their interest payments. They don't have a way of raising more money. And so, a lot of these companies, went public via SPAC because they had gone to the end of the fundraising well prior to that. So when you kind of run out of these options, that's the end of the road. I believe, the article didn't get too into it, but their subsidiaries are still operating. So maybe what we see from this is like, Selina Mexico becomes its own company. Maybe these companies kind of spin off and they're their own brands or their own franchises within different companies. I think it'll take what
was trying to do, right?
Yeah.
Like what?
like what Vacasa was trying to do, try
Oh,
and
yeah.
turn it back to a local operation.
Well, I think they're still
Yeah.
trying to do that, right? Like that was just announced their last quarter, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah. And so, I mean, Vacasa of the three that I mentioned seems like it might be the one that could be able to turn it around if they're trying to revert back to the strategy of going more local. I don't think that Sonder is going to be as lucky. I mean, I would be very surprised if they finish out the year. But I think by
All right.
October, yeah.
Bold prediction, Brandy. Does Saunders survive through the end of the year? Yes or no?
I would be very surprised. I'm going to say no.
When do you think their solvency will hit?
October, maybe.
All right, the October
And I don't like
surprise.
that, but also I think it could be another. I don't think that we'll see the end of Sonder. I think it's going to be, a restructuring. There will be because there are parts of their portfolio that are like absolutely great properties that must be doing, having some good cash contribution margin and could be good operated on a smaller scale. And I think that, I mean, if we kind of take a step back, I think that's probably the problem with a lot of of the VC backed companies that we've seen over the last couple of years, where there's this push for super high growth and it's growth at all costs. And this was not just in our industry, but across kind of like the VC landscape. It was like, worry about profitability later. And unfortunately, that's just coming to a head now. Like there's no more cash and profitability is necessary to maintain the business.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious too, because Sonder, could pull a Lyric, right? Where Lyric went out of business and actually someone has purchased the name, the rights, right? They have the brand and now they can do with it what they want. And so maybe Sonder can spin that off. I would think the Selina version of like, kind of turning into its own franchise by destination would be the successful route for them. But yeah, Sonder, I feel like it's a little bit of a different story.
Yeah, so obviously we'll have to see. Again, it doesn't help companies like us, like Romy, when all of the when we go to fundraise, that is like if we're trying to get new owners, it's like, okay, well, how are you different from these companies that are publicly imploding? But I just the article mentions that when the financial historians look back on kind of the 21-22 era of all these SPAC mergers, that a lot of them have failed, and it's because they weren't financially viable to go public. And I think most people kind of predicted that.
Yeah, the last inch efforts, they're starting to crash and burn.
Yeah. So it's interesting. Yeah. So I would say that my prediction for Selina is that they just kind of spin off, or maybe they rebrand, but those like legal entities in the different countries where the properties are doing well, I think that they will probably become their own companies. And we've talked about this a bit before, but I think it's very hard to scale. And it's, so maybe having, Selina Brazil, and that's even that. I mean, they're in huge countries. So if they have, one country or, group of countries, that might be more feasible.
Yeah. Michael, I want to ask you a question around that because you're Mr. Brand himself, right? Like you've created two brands in two different niches. So I would love to kind of like, what's your thought on
you read my mind. I was just thinking like, where did these guys go wrong and why are Hilton and Marriott and Hyatt doing great? And it's because they all operate, but they don't operate everything. They franchise out their brand a lot more so than they do operate. And I think, if I was at the helm at Sonder, that's what I would try and do, is turn it into both operations and brands, but also manage properties that aren't branded for you, or even more importantly, franchise the brand and the standards to third parties, and make revenue that isn't ops heavy and isn't headcount heavy. Really, it's like, why did Airbnb succeed and no one else in the space did? Just because Airbnb, the business model is the same as Expedia and Booking. And Sonder and Selina came in saying, oh, well, we can just do it all ourselves. Forget how successful Marriott is. We don't need them. We'll just do it our own way. Well, no, just copy other people. It's not rocket science. It's really worked for them. Just do what they're doing. Do it in your own way. Do it a little bit differently. That's great. But the business model is proven there. So why change it?
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting. Maybe in 5-10 years, we can look back and see how Casago or Casiola, like, brands in our space that have already started to franchise, if they're the ones that are really holding out in the long run and succeeding at that kind of like brand flag name recognition, because they went that route instead of trying to manage and operate everything themselves.
Okay. Will, bold question back to you. So short term and long term. How soon is Sonder in delinquency? And will a short-term rental brand kind of reach a national scale that it's at least semi-recognizable by consumers in 5 years?
I'm with Brandy on the Sonder thing. I don't think they're going to be around much longer. I've been surprised that they're still here today. So I'll go the same time frame as Brandy. I'll give them till October. And then honestly, I would love to say, like, I would love to say, I hope that it's a Casiola or a Casago or, someone that we know in the industry that creates that national brand and flag. But I don't honestly, I don't see it. It could be a Wander. I could see like this from the single family home side, a Wander being that type of brand, but I also don't know how successful they are post opening up their doors for management and inventory that they don't truly own. So I would say for me, I just love what they've built. And I think they, from a outside perception point of view, that it looks great, but I just don't know the actual finances. So
I'll disagree on both fronts just to keep it as
keep it interesting, keep it spicy.
People who have lots of money invested in the Sonders of the world are going to be hesitant to let it die. So it's not a matter of if for me. I think the writing's pretty clear on the wall. But can they try one more thing? Can they try to franchise it and someone put in more money and stretch it out another 6 months or a year? So I think it is hard to let a big publicly traded company die. So I'd be... maybe they've tried everything. Maybe they're at the end of their runway.
If they did go the franchise route, though, I'd be like really shocked to see an operator be like, "Yeah, I want that flag on all my homes. Like, let's do it, or on my buildings. Like, yeah, you've been doing so well." Is it a nice brand when publicly you are crashing and burning financially? That's the thing. It's like, and I'm sure their guest scores aren't that great. Like, they can't be doing well in all areas. I don't know.
I would say that from a brand perspective, though, the brand identity, they did a really good job with branding. I think that if they file for Chapter 11, where they get to restructure the company and it kind of gets broken down, I can definitely see a version of Selina and Sonder potentially, like reemerging, just much smaller, and it might not look like what we're thinking of, but they have built a great brand. And, we know so much about like how the sausage is made. So do people in our industry. But if I just showed a friend of mine, like their Instagram, and brought them to their building 17 West in Miami, they would be like, this place is awesome. So, it's like, it's kind of like anything. You can see these different, you can see, sorry, there's someone knocking at the door. I just got very distracted. But yeah, so you can see like every group has their like problem children, but if you just show the public a great brand and a great product, they're going to like it. So that's how it can survive.
And then I agree. And then to the other point, my gut says that one of the hotel flags will buy the market leader. Maybe an IHG buys a Casago, or a Marriott buys a iTrip, or something along those lines, right? I think in order for it to reach national scale and name and brand, then it's going to take a big player like that coming in. I think it's going to be Marriott? No, because their program's pretty successful as it is. They don't need to fix something that seemingly isn't broken. But there's still some big plays left to be made by some of the other flags. And we've seen Wyndham try again at short-term rentals. Maybe they're ready to try again when the market is ripe and consolidated and ready for it. So
yeah, I don't know. I think it's gonna be a long time. I think it's gonna be quite a while, and it's not gonna. Who knows? Maybe the show will still be running by the time that happens. But if we're still running and happy to cover that story and tell have Kelsey play back the clip of me being wrong. But
I also think the thing is that we're so used to these days things happening so quickly, like major things happening in a couple of months. But I think that's also where some of these downfalls have happened, where growth or success or whatever is expected on such a short timeline. And it takes a long time for things to play out. And I think that that's just like kind of important to remember that, like, if any of these big things are happening, if any big flag is trying to buy an operator or things like that, those conversations could already be in the works, and it still could take 2 years, So
2 years.
Yeah. So I think we just have to be patient, which is not something our generation is notoriously good at, I think.
Not at all.
Let's rewind 5 years back. 2019, Sonder had probably just raised $100 million, and everyone's like, "Oh my gosh, look at them." Vacasa was teasing going public, but and then COVID slaps us all around and knocks us all down a notch or two, and then we rise from the ashes, and then yes, a lot can happen in 5 years.
You have to have these big, bold visions. I actually was looking through a really old pitch deck of ours, like very, very old, and the plans for like our 2022, 2023 expansion were, ambitious. It was like international, like multiple international locations, but you have to be able to sell a dream, and for not just for your investors, but for yourself. Like, what are we working towards, And then, there's the realities, but you have to if you're not, if you don't have,
you could have gone international. You could have been in a bunch of different markets, but you looked around the room and said, well, Saunders failing at it. Lyric just went belly up.
Stay Alfred's down.
Domio's a fraud.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's also another thing. And I've been talking with a couple other operators over the last like month or two about, slow growth, and like people who are like, I'm adding a little bit at a time. And I think that is really, I really think that is a smart strategy, especially if you're self-funded or you just have a small seed round or something. Like, if you keep a lean team, you can have better margins, which is very difficult in this business. So I'm here now for the slower growth.
Well, to the comment you said earlier, it's like it was your 2022 dreams and goals were super ambitious. And I was watching this morning, the founder and CEO of NVIDIA talking about, starting a company 30 years ago, and knowing what he knows now, like, would he do it again? He was like, hell no. If I knew how hard this was going to be, I would have never thought about it. That's what makes entrepreneurship so exciting, is that you always have to kind of think like, how hard can it be? Because you have that kind of like, what do you call the, I don't know.
Delusion?
Why I'm struggling. Yeah. You have the delusion of not knowing what you don't know. And thankfully, like, that's what creates so many great companies that we have in the world, from Amazon to Apple to whatever, major brand names, and then a bunch of the companies in our industry, right? Like, everyone's just like, how hard can it be? And has that delusion to
Very
sell
hard.
a goal and a mission. Yeah. Like, but we still, like, everyone's still chugging along, right? At least all the good ones. So the good apples are still here. So that's what makes the entrepreneurship piece of all of this so exciting.
I was talking with a founder buddy of mine on Friday, like, dude, why didn't you tell me how hard all of this was going to be?
Yeah.
He was like, everybody, it's hard for everybody. So you just gotta roll up the sleeves.
Well, that's why I also like want to offer, compassion to the people at Selina and Desonder and like all these companies that it's really easy for people to sit on the sidelines and skewer people who
sure.
are failing, but they built big companies. I'm sure every business leader out there has made some decisions that they in hindsight wouldn't have made. And so it is pretty brutal to watch what you've built crumble. So I like there's, it's lessons that we should all learn from them, but they built big businesses that went public one way or another and were successful for a period of time. And, for there's a lot of entrepreneurs and founders that listen to the show and like, you know how hard the struggle is. So it's just like, be grateful you're not failing on a kind of like public stage.
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
Or just being associated with others, right? Like you're a Sonder employee who's done a good job and hit all your own metrics, but it's not similar to Vacasa. A lot of people dislike Vacasa, but there's fantastic staff of Vacasa, both locally and in the home office.
100%.
So
100%. Yeah, there's some Napoleons out there, as we like to call them, that like to put a spotlight on people for no reason, even though half their inventory is ass anyways. That's my rant of the day, and we'll move on. But
we didn't get to cover our 2024 travel kind of like mid-year or a little bit post mid-year spending
there's
report.
a reason. There's a reason for that, because I didn't want to. I don't have the brain power to go that route, so I was let's just keep going down this route.
No. I think it's worth a good amount of time to kind of see where we've gone like this far through the year and kind of maybe the interesting things, so we can earmark that for another episode. But how about you guys? What is going on in your weeks this week? Wow.
You know me, I don't ever give away too much, but it's going to be a busy heads down week over here.
I was gonna say I'm getting ready to go to my folks' place next week, so this week will be a lot of trying to get ahead. But like I said in the beginning of the episode, if you're in Colorado, Eric Mason and Oliver from Wheelhouse, we're putting a little short-term rental dinner together this Thursday. So I'll make sure to put a link in the show notes for the listeners. But we'll love any Colorado people to come meet up. You can be a vendor, an operator, a host, whatever. We don't care. Just want to meet other people. So that's kind of my big plan. Got a little bit of everything. R&R, get ahead, social, all the stuff. It's going to be fun.
Nice.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
We'll have
all right.
a good week, everybody. Speak soon.
Yes. You know what to do. Like, subscribe, all the things. And we'll see you guys again next week. Oh, next week we have a special guest, by the way. Michael, should we tell them really quick?
Go for it.
All right. Sam Dundas.
Well,
okay. Too late.
We'll welcome Sam on the
show. Anyways, we'll see you guys next week. Special guest. Going to go into AI. Have fun. See you next week.